Hi, this is Beth Billings with Around the Table Yarns, and we are joined today by Lindsey Fowler, the designer of our sock club pattern, the Kindling Socks. And today we are working on the heel flap, the heel turn, and if we get to it, the gusset, but that's a lot of knitting in an hour. So I want to welcome you, Lindsey, and we're delighted to see you again. We had you in the shop with us not so very long ago, but it's wonderful to see you again. I'm a little envious of your stash.
It's a little overflow. We're coming off of like festival season, so it's much right now.
It's very nice. I think you
The
have
top is all sweaters, and then the second row is like single skeins, and then scraps
and books.
And scraps and books, and then the bottom, I have no idea. That's like a pit of despair. I have no idea. My whole this is like my guest room office kind of mixed space, and I've been like, it's where we hid all the Christmas presents. So it was like kind of between festivals and book trips and Christmas, this room was a disaster. So it's in the middle of like cleaning up. So I don't have my samples. I have no idea where they are right now. They might be out in the cedar trunk. I just finally put everything back in there.
Okay.
But I do have the pattern in front of me, so
you have the pattern, and I have my sample in front of me, and I can do the demo part if you want. Do you want to, but before we start that, and since we have you with us, would you like to talk a little bit about the pattern, your inspiration, or anything that you'd like to share with us about the pattern? Because it's really a treat to have you with us.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so the pattern was, so I don't know if you guys have, if anybody knows my high desert socks. It's my fingering weight held double, like hiking sock. And it was like such a simple pattern, but it was so well received and everybody loved it, and everybody was asking for a fingering weight version of it. But if I did a fingering weight version of it, it would literally been like a striped socks. Like it wasn't like, there wasn't enough to it. So I came up with the idea of doing like a single colored textured version of that sock in fingering weight, and that's kind of how this was born. That's how you get those little garter stripe garter texture stripes with the ribbing, and then I want to do a little bit of a twist and to kind of like keep that garter texture as sort of my contrast. Do the garter texture on the heel, which is really fun and squishy and easy. So I called it the Kindling Socks because kindling, if anybody's a camper, is, the little sticks and twigs that you use to start a fire, and I really wanted these to be like kind of a second step adventurous beginner sock that somebody could use to really, light that fire of sock knitting. And I am a very passionate sock knitter. So that's how it was kind of born. And I used a non-superwash for mine because I personally like a non-superwash sock. From 6 and 7 Fiber Company out of Denver. Rachel's a really good friend of mine, and it was one of her club colorways. I don't typically like to use like a special release color for a pattern, just because I know people like to be able to get their hands on it. But that colorway was just so beautiful, and I couldn't help myself but cast it on. It was a pandemic cast on. I remember starting those when I was, I don't know, was it in 2020 maybe?
Is that the pinky color that's in?
Yeah, it's like a kind of a moonstone sort of pinks and blues, and it was one of her like mystery monthly colorways. And it's super pretty. I keep telling her she needs to bring it back, but it looks so beautiful, especially on a non-superwash, because everything that dyes up on non-superwash kind of gets that sort of watercolory kind of effect. So it just looks really pretty on that base in particular. So yeah, that's the Kindling. That's where it all kind of started, and it's been pretty well received. People really like it. I did size it in kind of the full range, and it makes a really great kid sock. I did a kid sample in there too. That was also Rachel's yarn, and I used the scrap from the original sample as the heel and toe, I think. Yeah. So, and yeah, that was.
in working it, we've already done the cast on in our first
Mhm.
meeting of the sock club this year. But I just wanted to check in with you because on the pattern it says to use your preferred cast on. And so
Yep.
we have you with us. What is your preferred cast on?
I'm a long tail cast on girl. I don't find it to be too tight personally. I tend to be not a loose knitter, but my gauge is pretty somewhere in the middle. So I never really have trouble with a long tail cast on for that kind of, if I'm doing, wait, what is what is the cuff? Oh yeah, it's a 2x2 cuff. If I'm doing a 1x1 cuff, I'll usually do like a provisional cast on and do was like a tubular cast on because I just like the finished edge, but I don't typically bother with it for a 2x2 rib. I'm just lazy.
I'm
But
doing
yeah,
a sweater with a 2x2 rib that has a tubular cast on, and I got to like row 5.
It's
And
a
I'm like,
commitment.
this is a lot of stitches to be doing a little swapping around here. So
Yeah, there's been a couple of times I've thought about using it in a pattern, and I just can't do that to people. It's just too much. It's
you
great
like
for a 1x1.
yeah. Do you like a 2x2 rib more than a 1x1?
No, I mean, I just pick whatever seems to work better with the design in general. You could certainly sub a 1x1 if it's a preference. So for whatever reason, my 1x1 doesn't always look super tidy. The inside does for some reason. So I usually, if I'm doing a 1x1, I typically do a twisted 1x1 with a knit through the back loop. I just find it looks a lot nicer in my 1x1 rib, or I'll knit a whole 1x1 cuff and then I'll flip my cuff inside out and then do the leg. I just think it looks cleaner. I don't know why. Something about my purling and the way I transition from a knit to a purl, my 1x1 doesn't always look so great on the outside.
I'm sure you're being hard on yourself. Your knitting looks beautiful.
Ah.
I have seen samples. You were in the shop and you were knitting a sock without looking, which
Oh yeah.
we respect.
Was it just it was my Christmas striped socks.
Yes,
Which
it was before Christmas. I hope it wasn't a gift to anybody.
No, it was personal knitting. It's somewhere over here. They're done.
But you also prefer 9-inch circulars, and we've had more and more people asking for 9-inch circulars in the store. Do you have a favorite brand of 9-inch circulars?
Yep, Chiagu is always the red lace. Although we're not with 9-inch circulars, I find the cord doesn't really matter because it's not very long. So I use, I have some high sharps too that work fine. Since you don't have a big twisty cord, I don't mind the plastic cords with the 9-inch circulars. These are the Lickas, the wood ones.
I didn't realize they had a 9-inch.
They do. They're fine if you like wood needles. I only do with pretty specific yarns. I probably got 15 pairs of 9-inch circulars in size 1. most of them are the red lace Chiagus, but I have some other miscellaneous ones I use.
Okay. And you are very fast and your tension is very even on them. I did mine on the 9-inch until I got to the end of the gusset, and then I was like, nope, done. I'm going back to magic loop.
And you know what? I even do I do my whole heel flap and everything on the 9-inch circulars. The only time I change is when I do the toe. And I do that on a regular magic loop 32-inch size 1, but everything else I do on the 9-inch circulars.
So wait, does that mean you have one size 1 32-inch needle hanging around somewhere?
Yeah, and I have to find it every time I need it.
That's
every time.
That's awesome. So you've made it for your pattern. Have you made it yourself for other people? Have you used or do you do this, or do you do a vanilla sock like the rest of us?
I don't gift knit much.
Okay.
I just don't really have the time, and I don't have the energy, and I have very few people that Not that I have very few people that are gift knittable, but I have very few people that like appreciate them. I gift knit for my kids. My husband just got his first pair of socks for Christmas from me. However, I did use a sock tube that I had cranked, so I kind of cheated, but that's okay. And I'll gift knit for my mom because she's a knitter, and I know that she knows how much love goes into them. So, and then I will gift knit for knitter friends. I did, what did I do? I did a hat for a friend for her birthday this month. And that's the most gift knitting I've ever done in my entire life, has been in the last like 3 months.
Yeah.
And I don't know what got into me, but I did it, and I was pretty proud of myself.
It's a lovely gift. It's really a wonderful.
It really is. And
not everybody appreciates it.
I know, and you really have to be careful about what yarn you're giving people, because obviously, I mean, most people don't. If you're asking them to hand wash, I typically go for like the Regia, the self patterning or the self striping in the Regia for gift knits, because I know you can throw this stuff in the wash and it's gonna come out fine.
And you like the self patterning too?
I do. I love it. I'm working on one right now. This is one of the Regias. It's the same one as this one, just in a different colorway. These are the Perfects. And I love these.
We have their celebrations in the store, and we have another one. We have an Arnie and Carlos line and another one. I think Celebrations is not the Arnie and Carlos one.
They're so addicting. Like they're just so. This on like a 9-inch circular is my TV knitting. And I have a friend who has post-concussive syndrome, and she has had trouble being able to knit anything, but this has been like her go-to, because her brain can kind of handle this. But she still feels like she's kind of achieving something. She's a wonderful knitter, but she just hasn't been able to wrap her head around it. And this has been kind of her go-to. So I've been loving it with her.
That's really nice. That's cool. And you like to use a lot of non-superwash yarn.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a good mix of it. Yeah, I'll use non-superwash for anything though. I have no problem using and caring for a non-superwash in any garment, even socks.
Any recommendations?
I have enough for a non-superwash sock.
For how to take, like, if you want to make socks in non-superwash, how do you take care of them? Do you put them in a washing machine in cold?
No, I just hand wash everything. I have a sock day. I'll just throw them all in the tub and wash them, soak them all and then dry them all. And I have 4 sets of sock blockers that I'll use for, very specific ones that need to be blocked out. And the rest of them I just hang on the shower curtain and let them dry. Yeah. I haven't had any issue with wear on my non-superwash socks or anything. I find they hold up just fine. They don't seem to stretch out any more than honestly, I think they probably stretch out less than my superwash socks that have nylon in them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I haven't had any issues with them. I wouldn't gift it, but I really like them. I haven't had any issues with matting or anything. But I do have enough pairs of socks that I'm not wearing them every other day.
Yeah.
I can rotate them enough that I've never gotten holes in my socks before. So I'm lucky, knock on wood.
Well, you're young yet. It will happen.
Although I did finally get the darning loom, and I've been like dying for a hole so I can like do like a good patch on something.
Well,
I've been doing all my husband's pants. I've been putting patches in his pants to practice for socks.
Oh, good.
Hasn't happened yet.
All I can say is if you wear the same pair for a week or two, you should manage. It should.
Yeah, I probably have maybe 40 or 50 pairs of socks of my own. So it takes me a while before I get around to the same pair again.
I want to open up if anybody has any questions of the Sock Club members who are here. If you have a question, if you're muted, just unmute and ask, or if you want to put it into the chat, I'll be happy to read out the question. So I'm going to give you a second or two to unmute if you want to, but otherwise I am just about at the point to do the heel turn. How would you like to do this? I guess I could show the heel flap that I'm finishing, because that's the
Has
first.
anybody never done a heel turn? Or is
Huh?
anybody fairly experienced? Has anybody never done one?
Group, has anybody never done a heel turn before? So we're pretty comfortable, but we do have members who are going to watch this recording later. So we always include all the steps in our sock club so that it is complete. I'm just going to count my ridges. 1, 2.
That's the one nice thing about the garter heel. It makes it super easy to count. It's so great. Rather than like a slip stitch is pretty easy too, because a slip stitch heel is probably the most common heel flap you're gonna see. But the garter makes it so easy to count and pick up.
Yes,
it's the best.
So I'm going to turn on the. Right. I'm going to unpin you and spotlight me and go hello and go to my video. Let's see, camera's all cattywampus because we just got back from retreat and a little bit of a shadow. Oh, just turned off my video. There it goes. Okay. So I am just finishing up my heel flap. So I just want to show this is the finished heel flap. I've done it here on the first pair in a tonal yarn that is a contrast to the first one. It's done on half of the stitches. And then the turn I also did in the contrast yarn, so that when I started the rest of it, it was sort of a discrete section of my sock. So I'm finishing the last, there's supposed to be there's supposed to be 18 ridges for the size that I'm doing. So we're careful on Sock Club Lindsey not to reveal the pattern because it is a for purchase pattern. So we don't want people to, you know, get it for free. But I just want to point out, I have a mixed color row here of purl stitches from my first ridge. And that's because I forgot to change yarns on the first row of my heel. I should have changed yarns one row earlier, and I just was like, oh, I'll just start knitting my heel. So
I'm an extremely relaxed knitter. If it's not a sample, I don't tend to fix things.
Yeah.
The only time I will rip back and fix is if I know it's going to be like a sample that has to be under a microscope and photographed and go on tour with me. Otherwise, no one's going to notice.
So I'm just double checking. There's supposed to be 18 garter ridges for my size, and I think I have 17, and I'm on the one before row. So I just want to show, if you are doing a contrast heel, change colors before the first row that appears as a purl ridge, or you will have
I tend to do, you'll see in a lot of my patterns, if I have a contrast cuff, in mine, I always do the first round of the leg. Like if it's a stockinette leg, I do the first round of the leg with the contrast also, because I don't like that little like purl bump dot that you get in your ribbing.
Right here?
Yeah, like so if I'm doing like a cuff and I'm doing a contrast cuff, like this is almost a contrast cuff, but like I'll do the ribbing in the pink, and then I'll do one round of knits in the ribbon in the same pink before I change the color, instead of changing color and changing stitch in the same row. I just think it looks a lot cleaner.
That's a
That's what
good,
I've always done.
that's a good piece of advice that has come too late to save me.
It's I don't know, it's always just been what I've done, and I think it looks really clean and nice.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
So if had I done that, there would have been a clean line between my purl stitches. So this is the wrong side of my heel, and it's the last row of my heel flap, and the last row is the same as every other row. Unlike other sock patterns, Lindsey designed this to be a very simple and easy to do heel. So do you slip one purlwise or knitwise at the beginning?
I slip, I think I slip purlwise.
So
Yeah.
I slip purlwise and then I move the yarn behind, and I just seem to like that. And then if it makes a nice sort of beaded edge on the side. But if you slip it knitwise or you slip it purlwise with the yarn behind already, that's okay too. Just do it the same way the whole way up.
Right. Yep. I find that a lot with a lot of knitting things. As long as you're doing the same thing consistently, no one's going to notice if it's one way or the other.
And you will see that I am on magic loop. This sock lends itself beautifully to the 9-inch circulars that Lindsey likes. It lends itself to magic loop very easily. And then I have somebody starting it on DPNs. So
oh yeah, absolutely do DPNs too. I admire people who can do DPNs for an entire sock. I wish I could.
We had a new member.
So cool.
It does look cool. I have the terrible habit of pulling out the wrong needle.
Oh yeah.
And
I just get laddering. I don't know if it's just my knitting for whatever reason. I tend to get laddering, so I think that's why I like the 9-inch circulars so much. You just don't get any. There's none. And laddering, if anybody doesn't know, is when you're switching, like if you're doing magic loop or something and you get that little tension issue on your edges.
So I don't know if you can see any laddering. So my magic loop was here. So there's not
a lot of time it blocks out and it's fine.
Yeah. It's not usually a big deal, but it can be extreme for some knitters, and that can be a problem. It was a lot more extreme for me years ago. And when I discovered magic loop, especially for things like sleeves, the laddering, it wasn't so bad on small dense knits like socks, but when I was trying to do sleeves on double points, I would get these huge, because the needles were heavier and the yarn was thicker, and it seemed to not help so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving on with the heel flap, and I've done 18 ridges and I've slipped the first stitch. We're going to do the heel turn now. So again, you're slipping it purlwise. So you slip the first stitch purlwise and then follow the pattern. I'm on page 5 of the pattern for those of you following along at home. And I'm going to slip it. Again, I slip purlwise and then I move my yarn. You can slip purlwise with your yarn already in back, or you can slip knitwise if you choose to, but just always do it the same way.
And this is your heel flap magic. I love this is where you do your little short rows to shape the bottom of the foot. And I feel like it's the most magical step when you're a new knitter or you've never knit socks before and your sock just magically starts to take shape.
So here's
I'll never forget my first heel turn.
Yeah.
It's like been clicked in my brain, and I don't know.
I totally agree. And we talk about we often talk, and you can actually see, I think, where the beginning of my round was. It feels like that. It feels like there's a little fold there, but maybe not. The heel turn is where you turn 90 degrees in your project, and it's kind of the magic moment of socks. And it's the reason why we do Sock Club, because there's nothing else like it. This is the shape of the heel turn. So what we're going to do, just to talk it through, is we're going to work we're still working back and forth. So I guess I should hold it like this. We're going to work across the row to pass the center point and do a decrease, another knit stitch, and then turn and work back just to the other side of the center, as many stitches to the other side of the center. And that's different for each size. And then we're going to work these rows as short rows back and forth, going back and forth until we've used up all the stitches. So there's always a decrease and an extra stitch worked on each side, and the decrease is an SSK, and the decrease on the purl side is a purl 2 together. And those are directional decreases. So you can sort of see the line leaning over to the left on the SSKs and the line sort of leaning over to the right on the, is that right?
Mhm.
But they're paired, it's a paired decrease. So the lines go in opposite directions. So it's like they don't go both to the left or both to the right. One's going one direction and the other's going, one's going left, one's going right. So that it has a nice symmetry to the heel.
I feel like the first turn you do feels like a total leap of faith. Because you just kind of have to follow the directions and trust.
You really do.
I couldn't really wrap my head around what I was doing the first time I did it. Like, you just have to jump in and do it and just trust that the directions are going to work. And once you start to see what's happening, it kind of all falls into place.
We have a beginning knitters sock class, and the heel turn, we ended up taking, so the class runs for 5 sessions, and I've taken 2 of those, and they're 2-hour sessions, and I've ended up taking 1 whole session for the heel turn alone for beginning sock knitters. 4 more to do. Okay, so I'm now, the pattern told me to slip 1 and then knit over past the center. So I'm following the pattern. And what, so I'm ready to do my first turn. And I just want to point out that when you do this, so I've slipped 1, I've knitted some for my size, and now I'm going to do an SSK. And I'm going to slip as though to knit. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to put the tip of my left needle into the fronts of those 2 stitches and work them around on the back needle. So you can see the lean of those 2 stitches over to the left. And that's because the right hand stitch is laying over the left hand stitch. And that's what causes it to have that lean. And now we knit 1 more stitch, and we're about to turn the work. So the thing that I like to tell my beginners is to count these stitches on the left hand needle, because you'll know you're in trouble if when you make the turn on the other side, it's not the same number. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So let's see if I get it right. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm not counting. So again,
well, and the rule though, as a designer, I have to point out, if it's an odd number heel flap, which does happen, then the math gets real weird. If you're doing, like, there's some heel flaps that have to have an odd number just for the design of the pattern. And that's one, again, where you just kind of have to trust the pattern.
Right.
But that count won't match in that case, typically.
Oh, gotcha.
It should match in this one, but there will be some exceptions as you kind of get deeper into your sock knitting.
So we've lost a stitch, and I've worked in let's see, step 1. Wait, I'm doing math in my head. Yeah, I've worked an odd number of stitches, so there should be 9 there. So on the turn, you don't have to, so this is where I'm doing the turn. The yarn is attached to the last stitch we worked, which was a knit stitch. We actually only slip it purlwise on the turn. And then we work the designated number of stitches for my size. Okay, so there's that. And now I'm going to purl 2 together and purl 1 more stitch. That gives me the left leaning on this side decrease. And now I should have the same 9, 3, 6, I have 10. Did I not count right? 3. No, I have 9 and 10. Did I do it wrong?
No, it might be just it could be you're gonna have to do 1 extra at the end. I don't recall in the pattern how it goes. And you just knit over the last step.
Okay.
So I think it might be 6 stitches in that size. That is going to be like the base of the heel flap. I can't remember. Again, that's one of those things that it's in some designs, that number is not going to always match. You're going to have 9 and 10, or 8 and 9, or as long as it's close by 1.
Gotcha.
It's still going to be centered.
Okay. So now
I'll double check the numbers, but
so 1, 8. So if I could have done 8 stitches across the heel flap to get to the same number. I did.
Which size are you doing?
I'm doing the one inside of the parentheses. First size inside of the parentheses.
The 64. Yeah, that's the typical. That's for me.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 6, 8. Well, that's the problem. I'm missing a stitch.
Oh. And here I'm like,
okay,
is my math off?
No, your math, I was like, your math is fine. I shouldn't be on an odd number. So here's the wrong time to find out that you're missing a stitch. So I was counting during a conversation with somebody when I started my heel flap, and I did not count out 32, I counted out 31. So my heel flap is 1 stitch short. In the greater scheme of the world, this is not the most important thing. If I am a perfectionist, or I'm giving this to someone, or I want it to go on the cover of a book, I would rip this. It's only 18 ridges of garter stitch. I could rip it out, fix the extra stitch on this side, which is probably where I'm missing it, and re-knit it. But for the purposes of today and doing the heel turn, I'm just going to keep going.
I would never, even if that was on a book, like literally nobody's going
to notice. I know. But you see, this part would bug me. So I'm going to keep going, and I'm not going to worry about the fact that it is 1 stitch different on this side, but I'm going to remember that it's 1 stitch short on my left side, because I know, because they were on circular needles, they were on a short circular being held ready to do this class, and I just didn't go over 1 more stitch. So I know where that mistake is. If you make a mistake like that, it's like, this is where the proof is in the pudding, because I found that out by counting these edges. I could have found it out by counting my stitches to start with, but I'm a real world knitter and I make mistakes. So I'm going to continue with the turn. Do you want to talk about it at all? Do you want to suggest anything?
So yeah, and then it kind of continues the same from there. So patterns will always usually, they'll call out the first 2 rows of the heel turn, because those you're going to have to it's essentially 2 setup rows to get you, to get to the right counts and kind of center that heel flap for you. After that, it's going to be a repeat of 2 rows, and they're going to ask you to read your knitting. So instead of knit 6, it's going to say knit to, what does it say? Knit to 1 stitch before the gap. So you're looking for that gap where you did the slip in the previous row.
So that's
how
where
you're
I am.
Yep, that's where you're going to start to, you're going to put your next decrease, and that decrease is going to close that gap for you too.
So again, it's going to be worked as an SSK. So I'm going to slip this one and I'm going to slip this one and then work them together by putting the left needle into the fronts of those 2 stitches and working around. And now I've done it. And now I could tell you 2, 4, 6, 8. There are 8 stitches right there. If I wanted to get rid of my problem, I would turn here.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would re-establish this as the center of my sock if I didn't knit one more over. So I'm going to do that because I'm fixing my problem. But everybody follow the pattern at home.
So yeah, then you're just going to repeat those 2 rows, turning after every one until you eventually get knit essentially all of the stitches on your heel flap. And you'll end up with, obviously, since you've been decreasing, a smaller number than you had to start on your heel flap. And one thing that you will see sometimes is when you do
so here I am, it's a purl 2 together.
Yep.
And that's, again, it's across that gap, and you can almost feel the gap coming under your fingers.
Yep. As you knit those, sometimes with patterns, depending on what size it is and how the math works out, you may use them all up on the wrong side or the right side. It may be that you find yourself technically on the wrong side of where you need to be when you knit all those stitches. It's not a big deal. All you really have to do is do that slip 1 and knit all the way across, and you'll be ready to go again, and nobody's going to be the wiser. So I know a lot of people, that's a question I get pretty commonly is, oh no, I've knit all the way, I've done all of my, I've done the heel turn all the way that I used up all the stitches, but I'm on the wrong side. What do I do? And you may have missed a decrease, you may have missed a row somewhere or something. It's not a big deal. Just slip and knit across and you'll be ready to go to pick up your stitches. And 1 row isn't going to make a big difference. And it could be you, it could just be the pattern math. I know we try and keep patterns as brief as we can.
I found your pattern math excellent.
Oh, good. I have an amazing, I have a really, really good grader I work with. I could grade all my patterns myself, but it would take a lot of time. So I do have a grader that I work with out of Canada. Her name is Serena. She's also a twin mom and she's fabulous.
Oh, wow.
And she is a stickler for math. She is, her attention to detail is far and exceedingly above mine.
And explain to me what a pattern grader is. I'm guessing it's the person who does the math for sizes.
Yep, she's my tech editor and my grader. So she reads through my patterns and makes sure that my math makes sense. When I write patterns, I tend to knit and write at the same time. So while I'm knitting my sample, I'm writing simultaneously. Some people write their entire pattern and then they knit. I really like to knit it and write it, because then I can kind of wrap my head around the directions and how they would make the most sense to me if I was a knitter knitting this for the first time. So I will knit it in a sample size, whatever sample size I'm knitting for the model or is specified by the publication, typically in a size that I would want to wear, just so I can try things on and make sure the fit is what I want it to be. And then I do a whole bunch of measurements and a whole bunch of gauge measurements all over the pattern. And I send a ton of math and the base pattern to my grader, Serena. And then she does spreadsheet magic based on the grading, based on the gauge, and based on the measurements I provided her. And a typical set of, we have some typical body measurements that are determined by the Craft Yarn Council that we use for most of our sizing. Mm-hmm. She's super smart and super passionate about fit on all body sizes and shapes. So she has her own standards too that she uses. And we work together to make sure that our net, because where things get really funky is in sweaters, because you can't just size it up by 20% everywhere the body changes,
Right.
necks don't grow at the same rate that other parts of your body do. So we have to do a lot of thinking to make sure that it's expanding and contracting in the right places, that it makes sense for most bodies. So she's amazing and is really a partner, and I send her a lot of money to make sure that things are right. But it's worth every penny, and it was one of the best things I ever did, kind of growing my business, to find somebody like that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, she's really good.
And it proves out because, you know, every time I've made a turn, I've decreased the number of stitches remaining on the unused stitches by 2, which is how I knew that there was a problem in the first place, because 9 isn't the right number. It should have been an even number. And it's working out just beautifully. So I'm almost at the end of the heel turn with these stitches decreasing at a steady rate evenly on both sides. And so it's a really, to me, that's very satisfying as a knitter.
I am going to have to duck out soon, but I did want to talk a little bit about the pickup.
Yes. And I'm
so when you end your heel flap, you're going to want to be like, if you're looking down at your sock, looking down at your heel flap with kind of the leg pointing towards you, and your working stitches at the top, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? With the right side of the heel flap facing out, you'll want to be ending on like the left side. Yeah. Here. So so if for some reason you end up on the right side, just slip one and knit across. And you'll just want to be on that left side ready to start your pickup. This is if you're using a contrast where you're going to change out and you're going to use your main color yarn for the pickup. And my best pickup tip, if you have trouble picking up your stitches, I in my patterns always recommend, and I do it myself in every single heel turn or every single heel pickup, I use a little teeny tiny crochet hook. And it makes it
if I put you on the thing, can you demonstrate that?
Ooh, I don't have a raw heel in me. But I just stick the crochet hook through the ridge that I want. And this is another thing where as long as you're doing it consistently, it's going to be fine. So you're just going to want to determine where you're, pulling that yarn through and make sure you're pulling it through the same on every single ridge.
Okay, let me get to the end of this row. This is my last wrong side row of the heel turn. So I've done the whole trapezoid. And I'm going to change back to my other yarn. Here's my last decrease. So I'll work back over and so I should change to my contrast or my main color. And do you slip the last one?
Yes. Yep, you're right. Because you don't want to create any more edge stitches on the side of that heel flap.
Right. So I'm going to go back over to the other side. And would you have slipped these or would you have worked them?
I work them.
You work them, okay.
You could, I guess, hypothetically, if you're using a contrast, you could, you could slip them and it'd be fine.
And do you want to slip the last one or just work it?
Either, but I would probably slip it just to not create an extra. Okay. Yeah, so you don't create an extra. So can you hold up your heel flap to the camera real quick and let's look at the edge of that? Because you're going to be able to see, like, I can almost see, like, do you see, like, almost like a little, like, can you hold it closer? Sorry. Yeah, see that little braid down the side. Yep. So I would stick it through both loops of that braid. Yep. Just right like that. There. Yep. And pull it through in that one on every single one. And you're going to get
you use a crochet hook here.
I use a crochet hook. Yep. And so this might be a controversial opinion. I don't pick up a knit. I just pick up, especially if I'm doing the crochet hook, and just like thread it through and put it on the right needle.
Hold please, I have a crochet hook right here because this is not what I did. And I was curious about it and I wanted to ask. So I'm so glad we're having this conversation. I hope I have a small enough crochet hook. I need a little bit.
Do you have a fix-it tool, Beth?
I do have a fix-it tool. Hang on. My thing went away again. There we go. Okay, I have this little crochet hook.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take my needle out. And so what
Do you have your main
do I have my main? I'm just going to use this for the second because my main yarn is connected somewhere else. So I would change colors, but I'm going to go under here.
Yep.
And then
I just pull through a little loop
of the yarn.
Yep. Of your working yarn.
And is that not picking up in knitting?
I guess it kind of, I mean, some people would then put it on the left-hand needle and knit it. I just pull it through and put it right on that right. No, I put it right on that right needle.
On the right needle. Okay. Yeah, yep. That's what I do, but without the crochet hook. Okay. So there's the first one. My light went off, I think. There. Hello, light.
And it gives such the other nice thing about it, as long as you're doing it consistently, the inside edge is going to look so clean and pretty. Not that anybody cares but you, but it looks so satisfying on the inside when you can see that little braided edge. I love it.
So that's what it's going to start to look like on the inside. And actually, my technique is very similar. I put my needle tip, my right needle tip, under both of those legs.
I think that's how most people do it.
And I wrap around and bring it through. So both of these techniques are doing the same thing. And I think the real lovely thing about yours, and I know you have to go in a second, but the lovely thing is this garter ridge makes it so easy to find where you're going to go and pick up those stitches. And this is, I think I shared with you that we did a pattern from a friend of mine, the No Sweat Shorties from Olga Olach. And she had a garter edging to her heel.
Yep.
She did 3. You'll
see that pretty common.
And that was also really nice. And so we were delighted to get to do this. And then people in the class this morning, and those of you who have finished this sock and tried it on, do you find that this is really comfy and cushy? Because I think it feels yummy.
Yep. I think growing up is realized like appreciating garter stitch. I feel like a lot of people when they start knitting think garter stitch looks kind of crafty. Like stockinette looks more not homemade, looks more commercial, I guess. But like I think as we kind of grow as knitters, you really start to gain an appreciation for garter. And it feels like kind of a milestone when you can appreciate garter for what it is.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm sorry I couldn't stay for the whole thing, but I can't wait to see all your socks. I'm glad you're liking it. And I'm always happy to recommend other patterns if you're kind of looking for the next step or I love talking sock patterns. So if you're looking to tackle after this one, I definitely have plenty of recommendations. Whether you're craving a little bit of lace or texture or whatever, we can find something that works for you.
That's wonderful. You are always welcome to join us on Sock Club.
Monday nights are like the hardest for me though. It's with the kid. It's always game night. My husband, he's a stay-at-home daddy, so I can't take away his Monday night.
That seems reasonable. We very much appreciate having you visit with us today. And I think
you guys.
I know there's several people on tonight, and there are many more who will watch this video, and we're really grateful for your input. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Enjoy, guys. Have fun. Enjoy the rest of you. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Instagram is the best place. Don't reach out to me on Ravelry because it will just vanish. So,
well, thanks. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a good night, guys.
Good night. All right. Hello again. How are we doing for time?
About done.
About done. So we didn't do, yeah, it is. I haven't picked up, and I haven't started the garter portion, or not the garter, the gusset portion of the sock. So we will talk about that. I will demonstrate that next month if people need it. If you are able to come in, if you need help with it and you are able to come into the shop, please do. If not, we have done garter or I want to say garter. My mind is full of the garter stitch. We've done gusset shaping on other socks. And so if you're having any issues, please reach out and I can figure out which of our videos you might want to watch if you're further away, or we could do it over Zoom if you're wanting some one-on-one help. So thank you all for attending tonight. And I am glad to see you. And I hope you have a great month.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.